I feel rejected by God. So it all started in 2021. I was a junior here at ORU, and my health just progressively started getting worse. Mid-semester, I started developing these random food intolerances that would cause these episodes that would make my throat feel very hoarse and tight. Went back to see my ENT. I believe this was October, and he heard my symptoms and was like, well, sounds like you have GERD. He had prescribed me some medications that he thought would help benefit me so I could progress throughout my semester as a nursing student. And it didn't, to say the least. I just progressively kept getting worse. By the end of the semester, my parents noticed weight loss in me that I guess I hadn't noticed. So then that December, he just upped my dosage. And I come back to school the second semester at ORU. And come the beginning of February, I had lost over 45 pounds. Everything that I ingested would cause a reflux episode that essentially would come up so high up my throat I couldn't speak. Constant acid reflux that wouldn't end and wouldn't subside. I'm starting to have fainting spells because I'm not eating. So my parents and I found a GI doctor here in the state that I'm going to school, and they ran an endoscopy. Afterwards, I got my results back, and majority of what we were worried about came negative, and he told me that he had noticed a small hiatal hernia, but it's nothing to be concerned about, and that he would just up my dosage. I was just tired of the constant burning. By this point, my nursing professors have physically noticed my weight loss, and I had explained to them what I had been going through, and majority of them were very supportive, very encouraging, and very prayerful for me during this time. I had a bunch of people on campus praying for me, fasting for me, including my parents back home. It was so hard though at the same time because my parents had offered by this point in my second semester, do you want to come home? We can take care of you until you get better, then you can go back to school. And I was like, I did not come this far to quit. I am not pausing. I'm going to finish the semester and I'm going to graduate on time. By this point, my graduation date was already pushed back when I transferred. So I managed to petition my way into allowing my course that I had failed to be taken online, which actually was a miracle in itself because quite a few nursing students failed that same course that same semester, so we all were able to take it online. In that summer, I saw a new GI doctor back home where my parents are. They ran another endoscopy and said the same thing, tried to switch me to a new medication, and it didn't help much at all. But I was stable by this point because my mom had started making me these soups instilled in this like pureed form just so that I could digest it. And so over the summer, I was pretty stable for the most part. Coming back to school, my mom was willing to continue making these soups and driving every 2 to 3 weeks so that way I'd have food for the upcoming months. And so time had continued to progress. I was a chaplain at this time. That in itself was God. I didn't think I was qualified to be a chaplain for my floor, praying for people when I myself felt like my prayers weren't being answered, but God still met me where I was. I did end up failing one of my nursing classes the end of fall semester, which held me back again. And as discouraged as I was motivated to better enhance my education on these subjects so that way, even though nursing wasn't a degree field that I was passionate about, I didn't want to be a mediocre nurse. And my advisor at the time was very encouraging and supportive of my decision, so that really helped me a lot. I finished out my second year, spring semester, having passed all my nursing classes that I decided to retake instead of taking a semester break, and I was getting better health-wise just by the soup that my mom had been making. So that summer I was spending a lot of time in my word trying to prepare myself to be a returning chaplain again this upcoming fall of 2023. Even though I still didn't feel qualified, I wanted to be equipped enough to be someone people could come to on my floor and just be strong enough myself as a whole in my faith. So fall semester 2023, I am finally a junior again after being held back and I'm excited. I had met a new group of friends who were supportive and helping me at this time. It unfortunately was not an easy semester. I did end up failing a second time on my final. I just remember being like, God, I did everything. I studied. I thought this is what you called me to. Like, why else am I here? I know I'm not passionate about it, but I thought I was doing this for you. I thought you told me to do this. And just, I remember questioning God and questioning my faith and why he brought me here. And the word got out that I'd failed, and I had so many supportive texts and calls that I wasn't answering at the time because I just didn't know where to go from here. I didn't know if I was coming back to school. I kind of fell into this like hole of who am I? What am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And essentially God met me where I was. It's so crazy because I had this melody that was in my dream one of the nights. This was like winter break, and I recorded it on GarageBand on my little MacBook Air, and I had titled it Dear God. This melody was formed from the tears that I cried. I just remember being like, I feel rejected by God. And whenever I didn't have the words to say, I would just continue adding on to this melody that I heard in my head. I think my parents were like eavesdropping outside of my room, and eventually my mom and my dad came to me and they're like, why don't you go into music? And I was like, what? As my new degree, I had switched over into music production, and I remember transferring into the program. It was just like I had finally felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. But I'm glad that he brought me here now versus earlier, because the stretching forced me to find my identity in him. So it's now 2024. I'm in my music production degree. I had seen another GI over the winter break in January, and she had scheduled another third endoscopy. They were checking for cancers, they were checking for ulcers, all the things. She was one of the best doctors that I'd had thus far, and I felt like she had heard me. I got my results back, and she had told me the same thing, but she had better clarity that I felt was better than the doctors that I had seen before. She had recommended that I stop all my medications and just continuing what my mom was making and just trying new dietary adjustments. This was like very strict. So like typically I wouldn't eat out. I'd go out and eat with friends, and I'd bring a snack, or I would just eat before, and I was getting by. I kind of just settled with the fact that, okay, maybe this is gonna be the thorn in my side that I just deal with for the rest of my life. And if that's the case, God, I still trust you and I'll deal with it. And so I did. I did still have episodes, but they weren't as frequent anymore. So I did feel like God was slowly healing me, but I guess my mentality at the time was like, maybe he'll heal me enough to where like I'm not suffering, but he won't heal me fully. I had made it pretty much a full year without having a very dramatic episode. Towards the end of my spring semester, I had found out that I had exceeded my limits in getting financial aid. So I had planned on working all summer so that I could pay for my senior year. And so the beginning of the summer was fine. I had my hours planned out so I could work just enough to at least cover my fall semester. Towards the end of June, my family and I came back from a vacation, and I started having an episode again. By this point, I had been so used to it, I kind of just took it as like okay, this is just gonna last at maximum 48 hours. I just gotta get through the burning and all will be well. And then a week passed and it wasn't getting better. By the middle of July, could only have a cup of like unsweetened applesauce, maybe a couple a day, and some room temperature water. I had started losing more weight again. I was back in the ER, and I was just facing all these conflicts, and at the same time, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna pay for school because now I'm not working the entire month of July, and I'm getting these emails about registration deadlines, and I'm trying to contact my professors and see how all this is gonna work out. And I'm just like, God, I've been waiting to be a senior for so long. I've been waiting to graduate for so long. Like, why do you keep delaying this? Like, why do you keep doing this to me? I'm just so grateful for the small community of believers that I have in my circle that have been praying for me and listening to me during this time. I was losing faith by the minute. I get in to see a different GI doctor that I'd never seen before. I wrote everything down. My symptoms were just constant nausea, constant body aches, constant burning in my esophagus that wouldn't go away. I wasn't able to eat just because my throat was constantly inflamed and sore. My stomach was hurting. This would have been my 4th GI doctor, and he was like, "What do you expect me to do?" And I just felt so defeated. I didn't expect a response like that after having had explained all that I was going through. And I remember my dad came into my room one night, the end of July, and he was like, "We're gonna go see Prophet Lovi." And I was like, the word prophet in itself was already an ick to me, because in my mind I'm like, I go to a Christian private school. We've had revival services. I've attended every single one of them, sat through healing services. I have gone to the altar asking for healing at church. Nothing's happened. So clearly God himself doesn't want to heal me. So what difference does it make making a trip out to California to see some pastor or prophet that I don't know, who's gonna lay hands on me and tell me you're healed when I'm not? I kind of rejected my dad's offer multiple times. And it got to a point where he's just like, "We're going." It was a very last minute trip. The beginning of August we left. We drove to California. We get there Thursday evening, and I'm sitting through this prophetic service, and I'm just skeptical of everything that's going on in the room. So I was in this service. There was a point in the night where Prophet Lovi was talking about finances, and he was speaking to a specific person, and I remember he paused in the middle of prophesying over this person's finances, and he turned to the room and he goes, "If this applies to you, like, receive it." And so I'm sitting next to my dad, right, and he looks over at me like, "Receive it." But I was like, okay, whatever, I receive it. So we leave that service, and the next morning I wake up to 3 missed calls and 2 emails. In the email, I had noticed an attachment from school. The attachment had shown that I had been offered grant that covered all but $2,000. So before I can even process that email, I opened the next email, and I'd been approved for a private loan that was more money than what I now needed after receiving the grant that had just been given. I hadn't been approved for a private loan after applying multiple times. So this was like, okay, God, if you can meet me here in my finances, maybe you can heal me, like if you want to. And so Friday is like the meeting before the healing service at this church, Revelation Church. And it ended up being a class in which he taught. He had felt the Spirit of the Lord had a message for him to say to this specific group of people. I remember him saying that Christ did not die for you to suffer. He said this point that I ended up then writing down, because I wasn't taking notes up to this point, that where medicine fails, God excels. And I'm just like, okay, God, this is your opportunity to excel. I'm believing that you will exceed in this. And he dismissed us by saying that tomorrow is going to be a graduation, which also stuck out to me because, as I've said already now, like, I've been wanting to graduate, and I didn't even know if I was going back to school yet. We hadn't finished my registration or anything, so he was like, "Tomorrow's your graduation." And so in my head, I'm like, you know what, you're right. I had actually planned on coming to this healing service looking real bummy because I didn't really care how I looked. But after he said graduation, something switched to me. We left that night, Friday night, and all I had on my mind was Hawaiian bread. I hadn't had Hawaiian bread in a minute, but it was like at the forefront of my mind. And that next morning, we're in attendance of this healing service, and I woke up with so much anxiety, so much fear, so much doubt. Looking around the room, I saw posters that said cancer and diabetes and epilepsy, and I just thought, wow, my battle is so insignificant compared to what so many other people are dealing with. And as we're waiting for everybody to come in before the service starts, they're playing on the screens past healing services in which people had been delivered from their sicknesses and ailments, and I'm just battling with this doubt in my mind. And I know it's the enemy now, but at the time it's just like, wow, God, like, I see now why you haven't healed me. Like, you have a bunch of other people battling with way worse than what I'm dealing with, and yada 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 yada. The healing service starts, and Prophet Lovi's coming around, and people are getting delivered falling out, convulsing on the ground. I am terrified because I'm like, I don't know what's about to come out. I was like, do I have demons? I'm really scared, but I'm also like, okay, speaking in tongues under my breath, trying to hold it together. And he comes up to me and he was just like, be free. And I was like, that's it? He placed his hand on my head, looked at me, and just said, be free. I felt nothing in that moment. And I just was feeling this height of emotions of, was I healed? Was I not? My mind is spiraling. I'm overthinking everything. I'm like, was I supposed to feel something? I was prayed over by some of his team members and apostles after he had moved on to the next person. And I just remember being like, okay, yeah, amen. I receive it. But also in my mind being like, I don't know if I was healed and I'm scared. And my dad's like encouraging me as we're being escorted back to our seats. And we sit through the rest of that service and I'm just watching people left and right get delivered. I just felt like I just wanted to break down and cry. And so as the service ends, we're leaving and one of the servant leaders comes up to me and she was like, how has the Lord healed you today? And I was like, girl, I don't know. I won't know until I eat something. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I kind of just gave her like the rundown, very quick rundown on what I've been battling with. And she was like, well, go have some bread, girl. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I did have Hawaiian bread on my mind yesterday. And it just so happened to be in our hotel room. So my dad had actually dropped off my brothers at Universal Studios that morning. And so he dropped me back off at the hotel because I told him I just wanted time to myself. I told him I'd wait for him to come back before I had bread because there was still that fear of like, what if I eat this and I'm in pain and I'm by myself? I hadn't had bread in a long time. And the last time I did have bread, I literally felt like I was dying. Mind you, I had been tested for celiac and that came back negative too. So we were real confused on what was going on. But my dad was very convinced that my health battle was spiritual. And so I'm sitting at this desk in this hotel room and I'm looking at this Hawaiian bread from across this hotel room and I'm just like, this could either be a great testimony or this could be how I go. I just remember having this back and forth in my mind on, should I wait for my dad and my brothers to come back or should I just trust God and do this by myself? So now I'm like pacing back and forth in this hotel room. I started playing worship music and I ended up taking a piece of a Hawaiian roll out of this bag and I'm like praying over it and I'm walking back and forth and I'm crying and I'm scared and I'm shaking and I eventually am like, here it goes. And so I took a piece, I ate it, and I continue pacing, I continue praying, and nothing's happening. So I take another bite, another 5 minutes go by, I take another bite. The worship music is just musicking. I am now like on the floor. This moment couldn't have been more intimate and more meaningful with God that he literally met me in that hotel room and I was healed. I just remember crying and trying to eat this bread. I'm talking like Viola Davis, snot, boo-hoo crying. I'm eating this bread while trying to breathe at the same time. And I remember I wasn't feeling any pain. I wasn't feeling any tightness. It was like this relief. Like I can finally have that peace with something that's been hurting me. I can finally eat bread. I hadn't had bread since 2021. So this was like such an impactful, such an empowering, such an intimate moment with just me and God. And I had a second piece of bread. What would happen in the past if I had anything that triggered my stomach is constant burning for hours and I wouldn't be able to sleep. I'd have trouble breathing. I was so worn out after all them tears and eating 2 rolls. I went to bed and I slept the best sleep that I'd ever slept. And from there forward, I've been eating foods and reintroducing foods that I haven't eaten in years. And the rest is history. I am now a living, walking, breathing testimony of God's grace and mercy over my life. I am just so grateful and blessed and thankful to testify this promise that God has fulfilled in my life. I am back on campus, fully funded, ready to complete my senior year in music production, and soon to be releasing an album this upcoming year. So thanks for listening to this very long testimony video, and I hope this encourages someone out there today.